G'day everybody, how are you all doing? Welcome to my new show, Relationships 2.0, Winning at Love Wherever You Are. This show is where we honestly talk about our relationships with open hearts and open minds. I'm Marco Teperino, and I've been helping people just like you transform their relationships since 2019. And in this episode, we'll demystify the purpose of your relationship so you can stop suffering and start loving. You must have seen people looking to find their life's purpose, right? But have you ever seen someone banging their heads against the wall because they haven't found their relationship's purpose? They may feel stuck, constricted, cold, conflicting, growing apart, bored out of their minds, but I doubt that you've ever come across people crying their eyes out because they don't know the purpose of their relationships. If you've seen someone wondering about the purpose of their relationships, congratulations, you've seen a unicorn in real life. But now let me ask you something. Is the purpose of your relationship to develop love, compassion, and harmony, or is it to profit, gain power, and get ahead in life? Having a clear understanding on the purpose of your relationship can and will most certainly change the way you relate not only to your partner or spouse, but more importantly, to every single person you've ever known and you'll ever meet. And the biggest problem about not knowing the purpose of your relationship is that you don't know how to win in this arena. You have no idea what the goal of the game you're playing is. And if you don't know the goal, you have even less chances of knowing the rules by which you relate with people. And therefore, you inevitably end up in a messy relationship without knowing where you're at or what you can do to fix it. So eventually, you either give up or accept defeat, which more often than not translates into either a complete breakup or a sense of failure and unhappiness in the long term. Regardless of whether you're in a romantic relationship, a business partnership, a relationship with a peer, or with your mother-in-law, every single relationship has its own purpose. As our main focus here is going to be marriage and romantic partnerships, I'm going to let you in on the number one secret which will transform your relationship for the better, just by knowing this secret. And I mean, your relationship will be much better once this new reality sinks in. Unfortunately, you can't unhear this. It's going to be branded in your brain for all eternity. So, the purpose of your relationship is to grow alongside your partner. It is to create the best room for your spouse to flourish and to become the best person he or she could ever be. And whether you accept it or not, pain, screaming, conflicts are essential part of it. There's no relationship without arguments. There's no growth without pain. There's no make-up sex without a conflict to begin with. I remember vividly the exact moment in time when I found out about this relationship purpose stuff. The very moment when it clicked. The light bulb went on and I was like mind blown. Talia and I must have been together for about, maybe a couple of years or so. And it was the very first time we went back to Brazil to visit our families and friends. We were at a beach where my parents own a summer house with Talia's best friend and the dude who introduced both of us. And we were all just, there laying on the beach, drinking beers and eating the sandwich, if you know what I mean. Anyways, we're just hanging out, chit-chatting about our lives in the new country, our plans for the future, but ultimately, we're just trying to hook them up. And it wasn't until Talia and I addressed each other slightly more assertively, and an elephant landed right in the room. The high energy of the moment shrunk, and the dude said, "You guys seems to argue about everything." So Talia and I looked at each other and like, what the fuck is this dude talking about? And he went on to explain our communication seemed like we're arguing like all the time. First, neither of us agreed that we argued about everything, let alone all the time. And we started debating whether or not we argued in open court, or in this case, in an open beach. It was right there and then that I realized that the ultimate goal of us being together forever and ever wasn't to make each other happy. I understand that it may seem counterintuitive, but it's not my job to make her happy and comfortable. That's her job. And likewise, it isn't her job to make me happy. That's on me. But our ultimate goal was to make the room safe enough so both of us could express ourselves fully, without constraints, without embodying a given persona just for the appearances. And from that moment on, I've come to know deep down that the purpose of our relationship is to grow together. And therefore, my job was to make sure that our environment was safe for her to do just that. If she can't express herself fully, she'll never know the consequences of being who and what she really is. She'll never become the person she could. She'll never realize her full potential. And if she isn't growing toward her potential and I'm not growing towards mine, our relationship is unequivocally dying. And to illustrate that, I'm gonna offer you a bit of a geeked out explanation here. You must have studied basic physics at school. Hence, you won't be that hard to grasp what I'm talking about. So, the second law of thermodynamics states that everything in the universe, if left to its own devices, moves toward disorder and chaos. They call it entropy. Bringing all these physics nerdiness to our everyday language, it means that everything that's not growing is dying. If you're not growing, you're dying. If your business is not growing, it's dying. And if your relationship isn't growing, it most certainly is dying. You can't be in a relationship and intend to avoid conflict at all times, because if you do so, you are literally contributing to the demise of your own relationship. And when you realize that, you can begin to plan and behave in a totally different manner, in a more intentional way, with confidence, knowing that you're not hurting your better half, but in fact, you're contributing to the betterment of your relationship. You begin to reframe the arguments and challenges within your relationship from two parties who assuredly love each other but are momentarily in opposition. You've gone from acting as a temporary adversaries to taking the most magnificent opportunity to becoming a better husband or wife, a better boyfriend or girlfriend. You start looking at the situation from the vantage point of what can I do to make her overcome my flaws? Because you've stopped perceiving the situation as though it's a street fight where you gotta do whatever it takes to come out ahead. What you failed to understand before is that in a relationship, either both win or both lose. You are no longer calling help from the worst and most despicable parts of you, wondering why your wife doesn't trust you. Why is she always saying that you don't know how to express your emotions, or why she's yelling at you that you are a jackass who don't know how to communicate. I'm not trying to paint you as the proverbial a-hole. I'm just trying to show you that if you don't know what victory in marriage looks like, you're always gonna be feeling like a loser. So now, where do you begin changing your relationship from? Well, the first step is that you must accept and surrender to the fact that it isn't your partner's job to make you happy. Nor is it your kids or your boss or your mama. It is your bloody job. You're a strong, capable, and intelligent adult who knows exactly how to make yourself happy. You know what they say, right? Happy wife, happy life. So, in order to make your wife happy, you have got to show up happy, enthusiastic, energetic, and willing to do whatever it takes. Every time you look at your spouse, you must see a flower wanting to bloom in your dirt. You are the environment in which you either flourish or succumb. If you're alive, full of energy to care for her, willing to provide all the nutrients she needs to grow, guess what's gonna happen? She'll literally open up to you, both physically and emotionally. Hey, I'm just using the pronoun her here, just because I have a wife. But if you're a woman, this applies for you too. You are your husband's dirt. It's within you that he'll grow the most or die trying. I'm not talking about becoming an agreeable partner who agrees and allows everything that your partner wants. I'm not talking about letting your spouse walk all over you, left, right, and center. I'm talking about entering arguments and conflicts with an open heart and an open mind. The intention is not to win the argument, it's to win the relationship. And therefore, you have got to condition yourself to inquiry, to ask questions in order to understand your partner's point of view. once your partner feels heard and validated, he'll be a lot more likely to compromise. She'll be far more willing to actually listen and pay close attention to the points you're trying to make. But first off, you must build a bridge for which understanding can go across. You have got to give the first step. You have got to make yourself vulnerable and humble enough to put yourself as the wrong idiot who is acting out. Because once you've been on the wrong side, you have a whole different perspective on the situation. You may still not agree with your partner, but at least now you truly understand his point. And the side effect of this humbling exercise is that you're always on the same side. And if you ask me, the right side is the one where you're both together in it, and the wrong side is the side where you're growing apart. As John Maxwell brilliantly put in the title of his book, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. And the most important thing is that you do it together. However, there's only one situation where you have got to stand your ground. You cannot budge. You can call it having boundaries. And the only situation which you must not give in is when it goes against your values. I'll give you an example that I've seen literally hundreds of times. And this has actually happened to me more than once. Talia and I have been together for more than 8 years now, and we've been living in Australia just as long. And during this time we've been living down under, we have undergone some massive changes in our lifestyle. When we migrated to Australia, we literally became children again. I mean, we didn't speak the language and therefore we couldn't communicate properly. We didn't know how to commute. We didn't have friends. We didn't have jobs and so on. Our families who stayed in Brazil, however, kept on advancing their careers and finances, whereas we set off on a backward trajectory. Until we found jobs in our chosen fields, we lived off our savings. So when our families were going on holidays and enjoying international trips, we were cleaning toilets, waiting tables and whatnot. So her family traveled to Israel a few times together, and we couldn't afford going with them. She grew up there. She lived there for almost 12 years, and the last time she was there has been 15 years. Now that we're in a much better financial situation, the whole family decided to go, but we found some unexpected financial hardships which pretty much didn't allow us to go. Again, she wanted to go so badly that we argued about money, and I stood ground saying that if she wanted to go, she would have to get a separate credit card on her own name. I wouldn't acquire that because she wanted to go on the holidays. She ended up accepting that we couldn't go under these circumstances. But as we cooled down and agreed that we couldn't go, we put our heads together and came up with other ways of making money to be able to afford such a trip. And now we're all happily and finally going to Israel next month. And the relevance of that is that I wouldn't compromise our financials just to avoid conflict or to appease her. And because I did that, we figured out what to do to make it happen together. Now that you've learned the number one secret to rebuilding trust, communicating more lovingly, and reframing conflicts within your relationships, I hope you start implementing these ideas to turn your relationship around. After all, we all want to be heard. We all want to feel safe to share our innermost fears, and ultimately, we all want to feel loved. So all you gotta do is listen, pay attention, and make your partner feel safe and loved. You've been given the most amazing gift in the entire universe, which is someone by your side through thick and thin, in sickness and health. So don't screw it up over meaningless arguments just because you don't know what to do. So if you truly love your partner and want to go the extra mile and offer your best, there is a link in the description down below where you can schedule a 15-minute totally free one-on-one call with me to discuss your specific needs and start winning the game of love. And until next time, take care. Cheers.